The reality that we're seeing is when you take an overly hyperbolic approach to AI and say it can do everything, then the humans become incredibly disengaged, right? It is, you get to the set it and forget it stage where you're burning the food on the stove because you're not engaged in that cooking process, right? I don't think you can think of a single good example today of where AI has taken 100% of a job and it's gotten better. Where you find those examples is where the AI has made the human better at their job. And I think that in leasing is absolutely the case.
Howdy. Welcome to The Report, a special segment of Multifamily Unpacked. We're recording this just after this year's Apartmentalize, so of course we'll cover the single biggest event in our industry, what people were talking about when it comes to centralization and AI. We've got some hot takes about AI's role in customer service and overall in providing a better renter experience. And finally, Andreessen's fund doubling down on their investment in Flow. Enjoy. We're recording Monday, June 16th. We just got back from Vegas alongside 10,000 plus of our multifamily friends at the Apartmentalize conference. If you didn't feel like you were in the middle of a Western movie set, you probably missed our saloon and jail booths. I think it was the most fun booth at the entire conference. The other thing you probably missed if you were nowhere near is our Insights tool. AI-powered call scoring and resident sentiment. It's now free to try. Some of the early metrics, 100% of all calls are analyzed and scored. Folks are seeing a 23% increase in tour conversions. We also announced some really great results from our online leasing solution. For those of you on Blue Moon, the integration keeps everything in one platform, slashing approval to lease distribution timing by more than 70%. And I think maybe the most impressive stat, 96% of renters rate their experience as positive with Funnel's online application. BH sped up submissions by 42% after launching it across their portfolio. So I want to pause for a moment. The booth, the conference, everything was, I think, one of the better ones we've seen in years. Tyler, there were panels on AI, panels on centralization. You had one with BH and RKW, our partners on centralization for third-party managers specifically. What were your takeaways from your meeting with those folks and just your takeaways from the show overall?
Well, Alex, it was an awesome show, and I have to, I guess, apologize to all those who planned NAA in Las Vegas. I was among the many who was deriding it and saying, you know, we can't go back there. But I think that Apartmentalize in Vegas go well together. You know, it's a really big event, and there was a lot of energy. So overall, just an incredible, incredible conference. To your point, you know, centralization's gone mainstream, and AI is the Wild West. And I think that was obviously the focus of our booth and your amazing hat that you're wearing right now for those that can watch, is that every single booth and everybody is using the words AI and automation and agentic, and most people are misusing those words as well. And so it's a fun time, but certainly, as you highlighted with some of our stats, we're in the early innings, right? So tools like Insights, which was the big buzz at the Phoenix booth across from the Funnel Saloon, is a great use case for AI, and we're really excited to see what our partners are doing with it. So like you mentioned, 100% of calls being scored. And then we had a lot of great conversations about what do I do with this new AI data, right? Other use cases, like you mentioned, you know, centralization and online leasing. That's kind of like a peanut butter and jelly combination of, we know fraud's been a problem in our industry for a long time, but if I take what is now a mainstream concept, and you alluded to it, but got to talk with president of RKW, Kevin Owens, and Melody King, COO of BH, about how they as third-party managers are leveraging centralization and AI. And that's it through the online leasing process, right? The ability to have a specialized agent focusing on applications is kind of, it feels futuristic of someone offsite leveraging AI, making determinations about renter worthiness. So tangible use cases happening in the world, and that was the panel I spoke on Friday. And then on the other side, a lot of brand new, emerging, exciting tech that there's still a lot of work to do to wrangle it, to use our cowboy metaphor.
Perfect. Let's hit our first article, and I know you're going to have a hot take on the AI piece of this. Cisco Research estimates that by 2028, 68% of all tech support and service interaction are expected to be handled by fully autonomous AI. It'll be at 56% 12 months from now. Funnel took a little bit of heat, I'm sure, in the early days, right? We all felt it for being early to centralization. And now we're really betting big on humans plus AI. Tyler, what gives us the confidence to stick with what might be a less popular approach when some of our AI competitors are promising full automation in a people-less near future in multifamily?
Yeah, well, the reality is that when you're in the middle of a hype cycle, you know it because the incentive is for technology companies and prognosticators to make the most outlandish claims possible to get talked about on podcasts like ours and much bigger ones. But all you need to do is look back 12 to 18 months and those same predictions, most notably things like robo-taxis. I love robo-taxis. You and I, Alex, like to drive them around in San Francisco and Phoenix. But they are not taking over the roads, as people have suggested. Now, we're going in that direction. And similarly, AI for customer service is a wonderful use case. We as consumers know the last thing I want to do is sit and wait on a call. And so AI, with the proper training, with the proper knowledge base, is a better use case for that. But some of these really hyperbolic estimations, there was recently one from a very reputable source to a certain extent, the CEO of Anthropic, basically said that white-collar labor is going to be gone in the next 2 to 3 years. And everybody, even the tech industry, came back and said, come on, that is dramatic. Change does not happen that quickly. And what I want to highlight, though, to your point about Funnel's point of view, is that if we use the past as any sort of indication, and there have been many disruptive technologies, and even in my lifetime, I've seen the internet come in, mobile come in, the reality is that the change displaces value from automation to high quality interactions, and customer service is no different. And so we're already seeing this with our partners. You can today, in multifamily, find examples of people running sites without humans. But they have identified in that use case that they need humans off-site that are focused and usually, frankly, 24/7 staffing to support that model. But then that creates the opportunity for others to say, hey, we're going to go more high touch. We're going to really build value by having in-person engaged leasing associates. And so I think that anybody who tells you black and white 100% AI will displace this full job, they're selling you something. So we believe at Funnel you have to be leveraging AI, but more importantly, you have to be creating an environment where renters and leasing associates can thrive.
I want to double click on that environment in that in-between phase we're in now, right? Which is there is no world where things are completely 100% automated. You still need humans in some part of it. You and I have talked about what we've heard from some of our partners or folks who are looking at Funnel that have been with other vendors, that this AI-only strategy actually creates more disengaged teams, right? The thing that a lot of these folks are looking to fix, which is, hey, some folks just say, I don't necessarily trust my people to do the work. I want AI, which I'm being told can handle all that. What actually happens when you tell those teams the AI is going to handle everything for you?
The reality that we're seeing is when you take an overly hyperbolic approach to AI and say it can do everything, then the humans become incredibly disengaged, right? It is, you get to the set it and forget it stage where you're burning the food on the stove because you're not engaged in that cooking process, right? And so we see that the best outcomes for renters is when it clearly identifies what use cases, what workflows, what tasks AI will complete, and then quickly identify the handoff where the human is expected to be. And so it's not surprising that when folks begin hypothesizing that AI will handle 100% of everything, that they get really bad outcomes. Most notable of this outside of our industry, the CEO of Klarna said we're dramatically reducing our customer service. AI is going to handle all of it, so exactly what Cisco said was going to happen, and prematurely made that announcement, then had to go give a 180 and say, no, we're going to go back to, we're going to make, I think his quote was, the most human-centric customer service experience possible. So I think that folks need to be embracing AI, but they also simultaneously need to be embracing what does that mean for your teams? What responsibilities are left for you? And all of us are seeing this in our own lives. It's the same thing of, will students use AI for homework? Yes. But is it super obvious if and when they do? Absolutely. Therefore, teaching the students to be able to leverage AI, but still put the human inputs. We say the same exact thing as we interview candidates at Funnel. It's obvious the people that are shipping it in and just saying, I'm going to use AI to answer these questions, versus those who are educating themselves with AI, but then creating very human experiences. I don't think you can think of a single good example today of where AI has taken 100% of a job and it's gotten better. Where you find those examples is where the AI has made the human better at their job. And I think that in leasing is absolutely the case.
It's interesting you bring up the job candidate piece of it with interviews, right? We found even that folks leveraging some tools like ChatGPT got the wrong information basically from ChatGPT. So
Yeah.
trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Right now, you hear people in multifamily tasked with the responsibility of operations are the most sober about what AI can and can't do. That's where you hear, often folks like myself that kind of sit above the fray. I talk to CEOs of management companies. They're incredibly excited about AI, as well they should be, but they're really not familiar with the pain that happens. You hear that pain when you go to the regional level or kind of a VP of operations level and say, hey, are you happy with the overall customer experience? You're leveraging AI. And often you hear these comments of, yes, you know what? I've found that my people are even less engaged. And so I think the exact same is true, that our industry at the end of the day is the customer is the renter, and the client, in many cases, for most people, is actually the person who owns that asset, right? The person who's buying and selling assets. Frankly, it's what makes American multifamily great as compared to other countries, is it is an asset class. And you can't just point the finger and say, well, the GPT got it wrong, right? They're going to want to know, I am hiring humans to manage, there's no asset manager in the world who yet today would feel comfortable hiring OpenAI to run their property. They are hiring a management company, and that management company is going to be holding the bill on that. So again, Funnel is investing millions of dollars in AI, leveraging it everywhere possible, but both renters and asset managers are going to want to be able to point very directly to who are the humans responsible for the performance of this asset.
Let's talk about some of those humans at the very end of the cycle, the customers. There's a Forbes piece basically summarized a Statista survey that found 64% of consumers preferred buying from companies that tailored their brand experience to their wants and needs. No big surprise there. But the key to making that happen is using the right data, remembering that data itself is fairly useless unless you use it in the right way. I know plenty of companies are promising super customizable brand voices through AI, but you've questioned a little bit of that, right? Why do you think humanless, aka fully automated experiences tend to erode brand identity in multifamily, and how could we be using some of that data instead to create better customer outcomes?
Yeah, no, I think that the use of AI to automate mundane tasks is absolutely going to be everywhere, and it needs to be, right? I don't think I need a ton of attitude in, just submitting my maintenance request. I think that self-service tools and AI conversations have a great place for a lot of those interactions. But ultimately, if you think about the brands that you know and love, right? And that may be, hey, there's a certain hotel that when I'm traveling, I'd really prefer to stay at, or if I'm going on vacation. And it is the human differentiation that creates that. Because at the end of the day, yes, the AI interactions that we have are only being driven by the knowledge that's available to them. And so I think that brands and frankly, management companies that really understand their culture, I'll give shout outs to organizations that have won many awards that we get to speak on panels with, organizations like Camden, organizations like Windsor Property Management and the GID team. They are human-centric. Now, they're leveraging AI across many different touch points, but you feel a different experience when you walk onto their communities than those that are just frankly trying to eliminate the human element altogether. And that shows up. And I think that's frankly what you have to believe is, Disney is probably a great example of, I have young kids. We go to the Disney parks a lot. You could automate the check-in at the Disney park. You don't need humans standing there to be able to check you in and walk into the park. But it's that smiling face that's there to help with the edge cases and the problems that makes it a unique experience. And that's different than going to the carnival down the street, right? That they've got rides too, right? But it is overall your brand experience. Humans are a huge part of that. So automate the mundane, take away the friction from the consumer experience. But we ultimately believe that as brands play a larger and larger role in multifamily, we're seeing more and more large management companies. What your humans communicate is going to be different company by company.
There was an article in BizNow this week about Andreessen's A16Z fund, which makes big tech investments. There's a quote from somebody with Andreessen that basically said, if anything, in a world of increasing digital abstraction, physical spaces that unlock human potential matter more than ever. So in that article, Tyler, they talk about how AI's impact on housing is relatively limited. As a company building AI specifically for housing, and as someone who believes in AI and humans as the future of AI in multifamily, what's your take on that headline?
I think there's a lot of truth to it in that these are physical spaces. And on a relative basis, the number of employees per building is still relatively small, right? If I walk into a Apple store, that's maybe 2,000 square feet, there's, 6 to 10 employees in that small space versus, the amount of square footage in real estate and in housing, there's not that much to be automated out to begin with, to be candid, right? And so while I think that REITs and many others have always been focused on funds from operations and the employee to unit ratio, we're a fairly efficient industry by comparison to many others. Every single semi-truck in America has one driver, right? And so the relative basis of automation, I would agree with to their point. I also think, though, again, the digital consumer experience will radically be different. And I think that's probably something that is under-discussed is when you've heard headlines of flow, and I think, frankly, most people believe the reason that the valuations came in where they were and the amount of capitals come in is that it's, again, going back to the asset class, that buying into the asset of real estate is fairly expensive compared to buying into a software company with, very high margins. And so I think that thinking about it through those principles of an asset class, that will stay the same, but the digital experience is really what's going to change dramatically. And leveraging AI, I think that some of it will change in how we use that. Other are just going to be macroeconomic shifts, right? So the big conversation in the world of tech is, are we still going to be Googling things in 10 years, right? Or am I going to be using my chat agent to do that? What does that mean in terms of how I find an apartment? What does that mean in terms of work orders? Will I even go into a resident portal, or will I be interacting with the ChatGPT that's connected to my community? And so I think companies and tools like Flow are playing at a really interesting intersection of, what we would call a vertically integrated tech platform of they own the real estate and they're trying to have the technology. But in and of itself right now, AI is really creating a lot of blurry lines between will I have unique technology experiences or will those go directly into the systems of record? And I think that's too early to say definitively. But what I will say about Flow or any other big technology, we love to see the investment. We love to see those who are trying to disrupt the industry and look for better ways to, at the end of the day, serve our renters.
That's a wrap on this week's report. I'm going to wear this hat as long as I can until my wife gives me a hard enough time. And we'll talk to you guys soon.